Welcome to Have a Life Teaching, the podcast designed for educators who are dedicated to enhancing their teaching practice and creating a positive impact on their students' lives. In each episode, we'll dive deep into the world of education, exploring a wide range of topics related to curriculum, instruction, and assessment in K-12 schools. Together, we'll learn from the brightest minds in the education field. So if you're a passionate educator who's ready to take your teaching practice to the next level, join us as we explore the exciting world of education. My name is John Schembari, signing in and saying, let's have a life teaching. Hello, everyone. So recently I was doing some professional development in a school. And I'm an outside consultant to the school community. And a teacher raised their hand within about 2 minutes of us getting together, and I'm about to start my presentation. And they raised their hand and they said, I hope you're not offended by this, which, by the way, is usually the first sign that you're going to be. But anyway, I hope you're not offended by this, but why should I listen to you? And the tone aside, and actually this person became a good friend of mine, which is the ironic thing. I even prefer people to be open and honest because at least you know what you're dealing with. But rather than look at that as being difficult or resistant, there's usually a reason for that. That fear is being masked as, I don't know what you would call it, aggressiveness, assertiveness. But really, if we think about it, what that person's probably asking, and I can't fault them for this, but you can't fault people for asking, how is what you're doing going to help make their lives better? How is it going to help the students that they serve? If we could start looking at defiance, not as resistance, nor something that is static and can't change, we need to do that in order to move beyond it. So especially our school leaders can still affect change, because the bottom line is leaders still need to lead, our students still need to learn. And sometimes we have to put initiatives forward, particularly when it comes to teacher professional development. So with this in mind, I'm really excited tonight on the Have a Life Teaching podcast to be joined by Becca Silver. Becca is the founder and CEO of The Whole Educator, and one of the main thing she does in her consulting practice is to work with educators, school leaders, to mitigate teacher resistance and to get under the hood of that and think about it from a lens of curiosity. First of all, Becca, thank you for joining us on the show. Did I capture that correctly?
Yeah. And I would say the thing that I do as a resistance specialist is I help people. I don't help people overcome resistance. I help people break through it, which is totally different.
Before we get into that, but we're definitely that's gonna be the crux of our show. Could you tell us a little bit more about how this became your thing as a consultant?
Yeah, for sure. When I first started consulting, just a little I was a teacher for 10 years, and then I was an instructional coach, and then I was a leadership coach. And then I became a consultant and I travel around doing this. The road to resistance for me started when I was a first year teacher. I started being magnetized towards the teachers experiencing resistance. And those are the ones the coaches were just like, ugh, like given up. And I found they actually wanted to convince me why not to spend time with them. And I was like, no, and I realized, oh, here it is right here. I was them. And I needed to figure out a systematic way to help them navigate resistance. Because what I found was I was exceptional at helping them. I was causing breakthrough after breakthrough, but I couldn't replicate it. And so in the last couple of years, I created a framework. We're going to talk about it today. And I can finally replicate what I was doing to impact resistance.
And before we even talk about the framework, the reality is, though, and we talked about this off mic, Becca, I don't know if prefer is the right word. I appreciate the resistance. I appreciate, even if I don't always enjoy it, I'm going to be honest, I appreciate when someone I'm coaching is at least honest. Because if I know what I'm dealing with, I can figure out something that
Mhm.
will work for that person. But if you're just yesing me to death and then not going to change anything, that doesn't give me a hook to work with you on. It doesn't, it actually makes it harder to start a conversation because at least if someone's resistant, you could say, tell me more about that. Why do you
Mhm.
think that? And it gives you some background into this person, their hopes, their fears, their desires. And again, it makes you a better coach to be able to target your supports for that individual. So, in some ways, a resistant teacher who's open in their resistance, even if it doesn't seem like it, it's a gift.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the open pushback is often easier to navigate than the quiet smilers and nodders, as I call them.
Exactly. And I don't know if that's because I'm from the New York area, but come on, bring it on. I know
Yeah.
it's personal, right?
Yeah. In the South where I live, there's a lot of smiling and nodding.
Oh, yeah. Same with
Uh,
the West. The South and California, interchangeable. Maybe
yeah.
not politically, but in other ways, yeah. So now you were mentioning before, Becca, that you tell people that you don't help those leaders overcome resistance. So
Yes.
explain what you do in lieu of that.
So the approach that I have to leadership and coaching is a human-centered approach versus a task-centered approach. So we get things done through people's humanity, not around it. And what happens in schools is when we see resistance often, what ends up happening is folks go to overcome, right? Think of that word, right? Overcome means step over, not through, right? So we want to step over people's resistance. And usually what happens is they use some kind of compliance strategy. I'm going to compliance you out of resistance. And it's not effective because resistance isn't a following directions problem. It's not a skill problem, it's a will problem. They're unwilling to change. So we need to understand their humanity and our humanity because we also sometimes bring our own resistance to the conversation to be able to break through it through understanding what's happening over in that human and what's happening with this human, me. I can help you break through the resistance in a way that doesn't diminish them.
So what are some of the you don't have to give your whole framework, but what are some of the main buckets or pillars of your framework?
I would love to share the whole
All
framework.
right, great, do it.
Yeah, okay.
Because like how do you deal with this? How do you work through resistance as
Yeah.
opposed to overcoming
Yeah.
it?
So resistance is caused by one thing, and that's unmet needs. Folks resist because of unmet needs. And before I even go into what the next step is, I want to normalize something. Everyone experiences resistance. You experience resistance. I experience resistance. All humans resist things. We resist things like our taxes or people like our mother in law. We resist people and things. It's a human experience, right? It's not just a thing that happens in some teachers. And another thing I want to share about my language is I never say resistant teachers. I don't label people resistant. It's teachers experiencing resistance. It's an
Got it.
experience we have and that we move through, just like sadness and happiness. I'm not always a happy person. I'm not always a sad person. I experience those things and they shift. Our educators, in their resistance, can be shifted at any moment. We just have to figure out what's going on under the hood.
Got it. So what is usually going on under the hood?
So, seeing that, okay, it's caused by unmet needs. Now what? Like, how do we figure out what their unmet needs are? There are 5 mindsets that can get us unstuck that we actually need to have to be willing to learn and grow. And the one mindset we know, growth mindset, is one of them. But those researchers that discovered growth mindset and it got really popular, they kept doing research, but no one knows about that research. And I put it together in this framework called the Catalyst Mindsets. So the 5 mindsets we can use to diagnose resistance. Some people nicknamed them recently the resistance mindsets. Those mindsets are we have growth mindset, I believe I can improve. Value mindset, I believe this has value for me. Belonging mindset, I believe I belong here. Success mindset, I believe I can be successful, which is the same thing as self efficacy. And ownership mindset, I believe that by taking ownership, I can make a difference. And one of the things about ownership mindset that's not directly said in the name is agency. One of the main elements of ownership is agency.
I love it. That's why you're here, Becca.
I know. So I'm going to be publishing a book on this called The Resistance Solution in June. So I'm also deep in the weeds of all this information.
I'm glad you told me that, because now we could pitch the book too.
Yeah. Yes. So the thing about ownership, another thing that I say often is we don't want to just aim for buy-in. We don't want buy-in. We want to go beyond buy-in. We want to aim for ownership. And that's what my framework does. It helps help educators have ownership over it, because the difference between buy-in and ownership is agency. That's the line, the delineation. When we are aiming for buy-in, teachers have no agency. They had no voice and choice in the matter and the change, and they weren't at the table when the change was being decided on. Ownership, they have some voice and choice on what the change is
or how it's implemented. Because as you were talking, and I agree with you, but as you were talking, I was trying to put my mindset into that of a sitting principal, right? And many, and you know them too, so many of them will be sitting there when you are saying that, back. And I think I could say this to you because I think you know what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all great, but my superintendent is still telling me I need to do this. So I can't wait around for my teachers to all get on board because I'll be out of a job.
Yep.
So if they have a mandate to do a certain initiative or to shift teaching in a certain way, that they're all gonna, let's just even do this. Let's say there's a mandate from the district that they're all gonna post their learning objectives on the board, right? And success criteria. And there's resistance. It's got to be done. It's a district mandate. How would you advise that leader to do it in a way where they'll have more success?
Yeah, I think one thing is I'm not opposed to saying, hey, everyone, this is the change. We'd like you to do the change, right? And then all the teachers go off and do all the different things. Some folks comply and they're like, okay, I'll do it, right? And then there's some folks that won't. And for those folks, what I would always tell leaders is I want you to analyze what is unsupported, what need is unsupported. Is it they don't value the change, which is usually what it is? Is it a success mindset? They don't believe they can be successful, growth mindset, ownership mindset, or a belonging mindset. Something as simple as that, it's usually value mindset. They don't value it. And so the next thing, the thing about creating value for someone is you need to help them match their internal priorities with the external expectation or the external goal. Okay. They have to align for it to create value. And so the next thing I would do is say, how can we help these educators create value for themselves? And I also want to say this. Sometimes we're in situations where buy-in is the best we can do. If I don't actually have voice and choice, sometimes buy-in is the best we can do. But when we can, and the way we help folks develop ownership, part of agency, by the way, there's internal agency, I believe I can inside, and external agency, the environment. The environment allows me to, right? There's both of those elements. When we are developing that external agency, there's two things we want to keep in mind. First of all, teachers tend to think they don't have permission to do things they actually can. And so one thing we want to do right off the bat is be clear with them. These are non-negotiables, and these you can use your professional judgment. We want you to use your professional judgment, because I think sometimes with these mandates and this buy-in, teachers you hear teachers use compliance language, like, just tell me what to do. And we don't want that. No, I want you to use your professional judgment. But what's happened over time is they're not sure, right? What is a mandate? What can I make a decision? Am I going to get in trouble if I do it my way?
Exactly.
That's exactly it.
To your point, finding out how to match that reality with his value.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And really diagnosing. So it's funny, once in a while, I will have a leader in my PDs give that exact situation where you just, oh, how do I get a teacher to write their objectives? The thing that I say is, this is a tiny thing. This hill this teacher's dying on. I would say go talk to them and figure out what's going on. Why is this the thing that this hill they're gonna die on? Usually it's actually a trust issue. Because they're spending more time rebelling against this thing than actually just writing it on the board, right? Usually
True.
it's something deeper. And so that's the thing we have to give up as leaders. There's a couple things. One, we need to give up what I call our shoulds. They should just write it. They should just do their job. They should care more. And we're shoulding everywhere and making a mess. We should on them. We should on ourselves. We should on our partners at home, right? We're shoulding messes. And the issue with shoulding on people is it brings resistance to the situation, right? Here you are, you're a teacher, you're not writing the objective. I'm shoulding on them. I don't say it to them, but it's there. They can feel the vibe, right? And what you resist persists. If I'm showing up to a situation resisting their resistance, I am unconsciously keeping the resistance around, the very resistance I don't want to have around. So I think step one when we're navigating any resistance is checking ourselves. What resistance do I have with them? And it is very natural, by the way, because we are working with folks, we care deeply, and we are failing, right? We are failing and helping them, right? And eventually we start to develop our own resistance. And the second thing is once we start to identify, okay, I've had some resistance, I'm going to let that go. We show up with curiosity, a little detective. What's actually going on in their humanity that they are fighting this fight so hard? And it's never the thing, it's not the symptom. What's underneath this?
Now, what do you do in a case where that resistance never ends? You never find that connection to what they value.
Yep.
But it's still got to get done.
It does. Yeah.
What happens then?
Yeah. We have a critical conversation. I'm a leader run a human-centered critical conversation where this is what I do, honestly. It's called Close the Gap. It's CLOSE are the 5 steps. And the first thing, I don't know if you want me to talk through this, but
Go for it.
the whole idea is I show up and I say, listen, the C is commitment. What am I committed to? And I always share what I'm committed to in this conversation that matches something that they also care about. What I care about connects somehow to something they care about. And then L is I list the facts. This is what's been happening. We've asked you to write the objective. And then O is you share the outcome and the impact of them doing or not doing that thing. And that, I think, is one of the most powerful things we don't do in leadership. Name the impact. Your children are walking in every day. They don't know where they're going with their learning. I've asked them, right? And then S is we seek their perspective. What's actually going on here? And the magic with seeking someone's perspective is reflectively listening. And another term I've heard of this called, which I love, is looping for understanding. You listen, what's going on? And saying what I heard you say was really having them feel heard. And we have to, understanding someone is not the same as agreeing with them. Often they say things we disagree with, right? What I heard you say was duh. And then E is we're going to empower you with next steps, including by who and by when. So who's going to check up and when are they going to check up? Because we do need to be clear. And I always tell people, don't do a critical conversation the first time someone resists something. This is not the time. This is after repeated failures. And then it comes there. But the conversation at least honors their humanity.
So now, shifting the conversation a little bit, what do you do as a leader when multiple people are resisting? Could be for different reasons. At what point as a leader do you reflect on what you're asking others to do and if that needs to change?
Yeah. And I think we got to look at the culture, right? We got to look at, and what is culture? And the way I describe culture is there's a little story. I promise it's short, but 2 fish are swimming and a third fish swims by and he says, the water's nice, boys. And he keeps on swimming. And one fish turns to the other and he goes, what's water? That's culture. It gives us what we do and say. Those fish were swimming and they didn't even know they're in water, right? So culture is the waters we swim in. It's what's normal. So if we are seeing large patterns across our school of many teachers resisting the change, us as leaders, we have to look at ourselves. That is feedback to us about us, not about them. It's
E-
like tier one support, the tier one staff
Exactly.
support.
So now, what about how do you tie resistance to change initiatives?
Yeah.
What's the connection there?
Yeah.
How are they related or not?
When change happens, expect resistance. So Peter Block says that. So change happens and different people have different reactions to change. And this is our first stop to shooting on people, by the way, because we tend to project how we approach change on other people. So we're like, they should just do it. Right. And so some folks are, we say, hey, a change is happening. Some folks are compliant and they go and do it. And then there's this other group of people that are grappling with, and I always like to give this kind of distinction, compliance versus engagement. We talk about that in the classroom all the time, right? Our educators are also navigating that compliance versus engagement. And we have the group of teachers that are compliant. I like to call them the good teacher, like they were good students. We have a whole cohort of teachers in our schools that were really good students. And they loved the teacher student dynamic. They raised their hand and they're very compliant and they became teachers and they're still compliant, right? We have those educators. And then we have other educators that are engaging with the change. And sometimes that grappling looks like resistance. And when the change adoption curve, do you know the change adoption curve? Change isn't naturally supposed to be adopted by everyone immediately.
Correct.
Actually, not how research shows change happens in organizations. By the way, our schools are organizations. And what we're doing as leaders and coaches, we're change managers. We do change management. Adoption curve says a small group is going to adopt it at first, and then a larger group. And then we're going to reach the epitome, the crest. And we're going to have some lead adopters or something. We're going to have some large group is going to get momentum. And then at the end of the change adoption curve, the researchers that made this curve call them laggards. I don't like that term. It feels a little condescending to me. I like to call them the latest adopters. And that's who we tend to label the resistors.
Now, how does resistance show up in school communities?
Oh, lots of ways, right? So we have, I used to do a PD where it was like 8 ways, 8 forms that resistance shows up. There's the behaviors. So let me describe some behaviors. We have folks that are the silent nodders, like we were talking about. They're shaking their head. We have, there's not enough time. There's not enough time, right? Usually time is a value mindset issue. And the big mistake that coaches make is they try to help the teacher manage their time. Nah, usually, sometimes they need time management skills. Usually it's because they actually don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Right. So, and we have the loud people that are like, that's not possible. And we have the defiant ones that are just wait and then close their door. We have folks that go and talk to other teachers and try to get them not to do it, the sabotage, and try to take it down. But what I've found in my experience, there's 5 forms that get supported by the mindsets, and they are doubt. They doubt it's possible. I call it, the next form is comfort zone. They don't want to leave their comfort zone. They're discomfort avoidant, essentially. We have disconnection, folks that feel like disconnected from their community and their teams. We have irrelevant, folks that find the change irrelevant. And the last one is helpless. There's nothing I can do.
Yeah. So now, which one of those types of resistance are easiest for a leader to lean into and work through, and which are more challenging? And how do you suggest they do that? Some of those are not short-term fixes.
No, that's a complicated question. I'll answer it a couple ways. One is I think leaders tend to find the hardest forms of resistance, the ones they are least like. The ones that are the easiest for the leader to do, they have the hardest time addressing with the teachers. Is that making sense?
Oh, very much from a very personal standpoint too.
I say we work best with the people that are most like us, right? So we need to learn skills how to work with the other people.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I think one of the hardest that I've found in schools is irrelevance. I think leaders have a hard time impacting and often need extra support in impacting the irrelevance form, which is supported by a value mindset, right? It's because we tend to think they should care about what we care about. And it's hard for folks to in a neutral way to non-judgmentally say and get, oh, they care about different things than me, and to navigate that.
Yeah. Sometimes you can find what they care about and what you care about, to your point before, when you have that conversation, that critical conversation you were mentioning. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough, especially if you are different kinds of people, types of people.
Mhm. Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's when we get in the way that I think makes we tend to, it's like Taylor Swift, like, hi, it's me, I'm the problem. That's a bit of leadership, right? We have to look at ourselves first. And I think us as leaders, we tend to get the reason why we're changing. We're like, oh, it's clear to us why this change needs to happen, right? Why isn't it clear to you why this change is happening? And to put that aside, be like, it's not clear. We're going to put that aside and I'm going to listen for what they're actually concerned about, what they actually care about, and communicate that, even if it's not something I care about, listening for understanding and not for agreement.
So now, Becca, what do you do in a case if you're a school leader, you do get mandates from up above that come down on you, and you are responsible for that initiative when maybe you don't even 100% agree with it? How do you recommend leaders do when they're charged with initiatives that they might not even 100% agree with, but yet they have to do them?
Yep. I think this is what I've had this question many times. This is my advice, and it is find the piece that you can buy into. And I'm saying buy in very specifically, because if you, the leader, don't have any choice in the matter, there's no chance for ownership. You don't have any agency, right? So I, as the messenger of the change, I would spend some soul searching time and find what could be valuable, how I could value this change, how I could make it useful, relevant, meaningful for me and the school, and putting myself in teachers' perspectives to then communicate it that way. I have to buy in first.
Got it. And now you do a lot of work with leaders about teacher resistance. Do you do any work around student resistance with teachers?
I do. It doesn't happen often because I believe that us as leaders, we have to do the work first with our educators. And it's a huge mistake. And I think this is something that got misunderstood with growth mindset, right? Mindset came out and we said, oh, growth mindset's for children. We not once stopped and said, growth mindset's also for all of us, right? And so I focus on, most of my work is on leaders and coaches. So that, and I work with statewide departments of education. I work with district leaders. I work with superintendents. I believe this work has to be done from the top first. And the 5 catalyst mindsets 100% can go into classrooms.
Indeed. We're talking a lot about resistance, types of resistance, forms of resistance, the way resistance shows up, but why resistance?
Yeah. Yeah. I spent quite a bit of time like, why is resistance happening in schools? Right.
And
It happens a lot in all the schools, right? Like, why is this happening? And something I discovered is every mindset has a silent progress blocker. I actually used to call them silent progress killers, but my publisher said I couldn't call them killers in a book. So I'm calling them blockers. But they're silent. They're in our culture, just like the fish are swimming. They're in our culture. It's how we assume school is done. It's how we do school. And so a couple of them I'll highlight. One is the compliance culture. This setup that we have in schools that someone, the superintendent, buys a program. They buy the new reading curriculum. We are teaching science of reading. And then everyone, you're now going to go through letters training and you're going to have to, right? It's everyone's expected to be compliant, right? It's how we do school. And here's the deal, or here's the issue with compliance culture. We hire critical thinkers and ask them to comply with changes they didn't choose. And what happens when they're grappling with that change? We call that resistance. So one thing is our default compliance culture. It creates resistance immediately. And another one I'll highlight is a culture of niceness. That many schools, most schools, we value harmony over authenticity. And what that does is it keeps us from having real conversations about the real work we need to do. And we think avoiding conflict, or you hear things like kill them with kindness, right? We say that and we think this is a great strategy. I'm in Facebook groups with coaches and they're giving each other advice, and kill them with kindness is a common piece of advice. And I'm like, don't do that. Putting icing on a mud pie. We're pretending like something isn't there when it is. Let's address the elephant in the room. What people don't realize is when we actually talk about the elephant in the room, it disappears.
And you know what's funny with the compliance culture? You will often still get people, not just teachers, leaders, anyone, but what can I do about it? It's the system. It's the system. But that is, in a way, a form of resistance. What can I do? I can't do anything.
But want the ownership.
And that's why that continues. Because, Becca, even in my own life, I've had great jobs, I've had so jobs. Even I, at times, have struggled with, they hired me because I think, but they're not letting me use the skills they supposedly hired me for. So I'm going to own it. Even at times, maybe I'm resistant.
Yeah.
To your point before, you think there's also value. Let's talk about this. So let's say, to quote Taylor Swift, I am the problem, it's me. What advice do you have for individuals who feel that they're resistant? They feel that resistance in themselves and maybe don't like it. What can we learn about ourselves from our own resistance and how to deal with that? What's a healthy way to respond to our own resistance and what's not a healthy way?
And I do this all the time with myself. Use the same framework, the catalyst mindsets, to diagnose what's unsupported. Why am I resisting, let's say, that teacher, right? And I'll share, I was working with a coach a few years ago and she was well loved, but she was resisting me. And I would fly in to go and do PD for her and reflect with her. And after the whole thing, we'd reflect and I'd say, oh, what'd you learn? And she'd say, that's a nice review. That was a nice review. It was 6 months of me flying in. That was a nice review. And I knew it wasn't. I knew she had skills to learn. I knew I was giving her, right? I started to resist her. At some point, a thought developed, a very quiet thought. So here I am, I'm like, I'm empowered, right? I help empower people. But there's a quiet thought that developed in my head that she's being difficult. She's a difficult person. She's trying to be difficult. And I analyzed in myself, okay, which of the catalyst mindsets is unsupported for me? And it was, for me, it was success mindset. I started saying, she's the problem. My own resistance was, I didn't think I could be successful with her. So that's
right.
Have resistance to change for anything, by the way. Everyone listening, if you're struggling with going to the gym, use the catalyst mindsets to diagnose what's unsupported, because that's how we give ourselves and other people the right support.
Got it. Got it. What has changed in your understanding of resistance when you started coaching around this to now?
I was a one tool gal. I was like, oh, you're experiencing resistance. My one tool was reflective listening. I'm like, all you got to do is have them feel heard. I was like that coach, right? So I'm like, you just reflect back what I heard you say was it, and then they'll get regulated and then you can move through it. And that's what would happen. But so what would happen with me when I was working with teachers, and also what would happen with coaches, is they would help. So reflective listening helps folks get regulated, which is helpful. It doesn't solve the problem. It helps people put their shields down. But now that they're down, we have to do something to create connection, right? And yeah, I used to be that one trick pony where I'm like, just do this one thing. And now it's like, yes, reflectively listen. That's often the thing I recommend. Usually, if we're at the point where someone's resisting, usually they have their protective mechanisms up, and probably me as the leader, I probably have my protective mechanisms up too. So the first thing we have to do, reflectively listen, we're going to put our shields down. Second thing is we're going to diagnose which catalyst mindset. So it's that diagnostic that's really changed for me.
What have we not talked about that you feel it's important for school leaders to know about working through or working with resistance?
Something that we haven't talked about, we've talked a lot about how to support people. And then there's this other element of accountability, of there's rigor, right? We have high standards, and I do expect you to work towards them. And I think a piece that we sometimes forget about is we need to have clear goals at our school, and we need to be collectively working towards them and talking about it. Because when we don't have clear goals, everyone's running around doing different things, having different priorities, and caring about whatever they are caring about, right? They're trying to make progress in their own ways. And when we're not unified, we've gone into schools with no school goals or no one knows them. And there's this kind of, well, everyone's pleasant, but we're not working towards anything meaningful. So that's the thing I want to say, that we need both. We need that supportive lens, and we need that human-centered accountability where we are clear and we talk about what the goals are, and we're all working towards that.
It almost sounds like resistance, you could think of it as a lagging indicator. It's a symptom of some other problem. The problem might be we're not clear in our mission or our vision, or we're not clear what our non-negotiables are, or what instruction looks like in this school. And in that case, then that resistance is a reaction to missing piece, if I'm understanding that correctly.
You are perfectly understanding it. That's exactly it.
Yeah, I've been in a few schools myself. Now, Becca, you have this book coming out.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about the book. Is it going to be a continuation of what we've been talking about, or are you bringing anything new to the framework? Tell us about this great book that's coming out.
It's an expansion on the catalyst mindset. So the first thing I do in the book is I establish why resistance happens, and I expand on everything that I was talking about. The first 3 chapters are why resistance happens and how we get in the way. I will not go into the catalyst mindsets until we've established why this is happening. And then there's 5 straight chapters, 1 per mindset. And in each chapter, I talk about each mindset has its own framework. And so in each chapter, you get to learn actual tools to navigate it. You learn why it's hard for leaders to actually impact teachers. We read about what's the cost of it. And I'm hoping when folks read that cost section for each mindset, you start to go, oh, I feel that. Because I really want people to feel seen in this book. And I've had pre-readers, I've had people read the manuscript before it's published, and they have said things like, I felt so seen. Every page I said, yes, that's me. And that's what I'm hoping folks both feel seen and supported to do something about it. And then there's a chapter on human-centered accountability where I expand on that. And I'm hoping that this book is a toolkit book. It's short, it's simple, and I'm hoping folks read all of it and keep it next to them. That's my vision, that folks, this is a book they keep on their desk and they flip to, like, ooh, someone's dealing with value mindset.
And I'll cut this part out if the answer is no. But Becca, within the book, are there any case studies of schools you've worked with that you want to shout out as being great examples of how they lean into resistance and don't avoid it?
Yes. The Mississippi State Department of Education. I work with their literacy coaches. I'm very proud of them. So do you know how Mississippi's gone from 50th to number 9 in reading and number 1?
In fact, I was just having a conversation about this, about their 4th grade reading scores with somebody.
Yep. I work with them. Those exact people.
Awesome. Maybe at one point I'll have some representatives on from Mississippi and you can come on that show too.
Oh, I love them. I would love to do that. I want to say one more thing about the book. I share about real people doing real things. And I also share kind of anonymous scenarios. So each mindset has a scenario. I call it the tool in action. So you not only learn the tool, you see an example of what it would look like for a leader or a coach to use it with a teacher.
Love it. Becca, where can people find out more information about you and this wonderful work you're doing?
Yeah, my company's called The Whole Educator. So my website, thewholeeducator.com. I have my own podcast called Coaching the Whole Educator. And so if you want to listen to the material I put out, you're welcome to do that. And if you want to sign up for my newsletter, you can do that on my website and get notified when my book comes out. And I have a resistance playbook that's already out. It's in my resources section. And I'm on social media, LinkedIn, which is where you and I connected, Instagram, Facebook.
Love it. Love it. Becca, thank you so much for your time today. This has been a really fun and interesting conversation.
This has been so much fun. Thank you.
Thank you for listening today. I hope you got some great tips that you can bring back into your teaching. Remember, have a life teaching without sacrificing your own. Also, don't forget to subscribe and be well.